All right, there we go. Now we are going to get into some hands-on database. And what I'm actually going to do here is also show you the online computer lab as well, if it's something you need. So instructions will be sent out, but essentially it's called Amazon Workspaces, and you'll be given a username and password and registration code. So you plug all of those things in and connect. Now this here, it's going to come up quickly for me, but it may take somewhere between 1 or 2 minutes to turn on. That's normal. The way that these work is they shut themselves down to save power in between uses. So when you're trying to get in, if that loading screen stays loading for a pretty long time, don't worry about it. That's completely normal. So, but now you can see this is my computer, and then inside of there, I have this window that is the Amazon Workspaces. So when I'm in there, I can go to the Start menu, and everything is there just like it would be on campus. We have Excel, we have Access, Word, PowerPoint, all of the software we need is there. So today we're working with Access, right? And remember to open up your program, hit the Windows key, and you can just start typing. So we have Access, and if I want to make it easy for myself, I can right-click here and say Pin to Taskbar, and now that adds the Access icon right here on the bottom. So next time I want to open it, I just click there. And the first time you log in to the computer lab, it's going to ask you to sign in your account. So basically, we need to have licenses, right? Microsoft has to get their money for all of these applications. And we all individually have licenses available to us. So when you're in here, you click Sign In, and you give it your Maricopa information. And the password. And it's going to say, congratulations, you have now registered. So there we go. Now this is all good to go. And the next time I do it, it's not going to ask me again. That was just first time. So now, actually using Access, so as we can see, it has templates. So you can use a pre-configured template, or you can start one from scratch. We are going to start one from scratch. And what we're working on today is creating one table. So I'm going to start with just clicking on blank database here. And as we go, if you can't see something or you need me to slow something down, please let me know. So when you click on blank database, the first thing it's going to do is ask you for a name. So I have been playing a lot of video games recently. So we're going to make this a Madden player ratings table, right? So think about when you're playing maybe a sports video game, right? Each of the players is going to have their attributes. How fast they run, how tall they are, how good they are at catching the ball, all of those sorts of things, right? That's a really good candidate for a database, and it's stuff that we can all, even if you're not a sports person, you can understand those things. Another option that I see commonly used in this class is Pokemon, right? So when you're collecting all the Pokemon, they're going to have their names, they're going to have their powers, they're going to have what they morph into, right? That's another really good case for a database. When we're going through these, think of something you want to work with and do it that way. Or if you just want to use the sports example or you want to use the Pokemon example, that's fine too. But if there's something else you want to work with, totally cool. Do something you want to work with. I am going to decline annotation, Iris, just because I'm not sure what that's going to do to the recording. So sorry. All right. So in this case, we are going going to call the database player ratings and hit create. And you'll notice here, it's telling me where it's going to be saved. And if I want to, I can have it go somewhere else. But in this case, where it wants it to go is just fine. I'll click create. And it brings me into my first table, but it's called table 1. That's not really useful. Let's change it to be what we want it to be, right? So I'm going to right click, that's my middle finger, and hit save. Now when I do that, it's going to say, now what do you want to call this table? And this is our general player information table. So I'm going to call it player info. Notice a couple things about how I wrote player info. It's all one word, there's no spaces, but I capitalized this I in the middle. In programming lingo, that's called camel case. So because there's no spaces, you need to know where one word starts and the next word begins. Think about those obnoxious hashtags that just go on forever. If they use camel case, then it might be a little bit easier to figure out what they're talking about, right? Same sort of concept here. So this is going to be my player info table. And I say, okay. And now you can see it changed the name to player info. So remember we talked about the columns and rows. So when we're working in Excel, our columns come across the top this way and our rows go down. So by default, it creates an ID column and it says new. What that means is that it will automatically generate one for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change that and double click in here, and I'm going to call it player ID, but I'm going to leave the rest of it alone. I'm fine with it automatically generating that ID number for me. What else do we need to know about our players? I will be mean and pause here for some ideas. Okay, yeah, position, right? What else about them? I like position. We'll keep that one checked. Yep, their name. Maybe we can break that out into first name and last name. And then we're going to want to know maybe what, yep, their number, exactly. Number, height, team, all those sorts of things, right? So now let's talk about how do we add those new columns in Access. Well, really easy. It says right here, click to add. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click right here. And then now the first thing it asks you is what kind of information are you putting here? It's prompting you for metadata. Now, this is something you have to think about, right? So when you're going to come back and do queries or do reports or anything like that, your data has to be in the right data type, in the right format for it to be useful. So example of using let's use their number, right, their jersey number. We want to actually save that as a number type because maybe we want to do a report on all of the players whose jersey number is 75 or higher, right? So there, we're using our algebra. We're going to be doing, right, 75 greater than. If we have that saved as text, it's not going to be able to do math. If we save it as a number data type, then it will be able to do the math. It's going to recognize it as a number, right? So we'll keep that one, and we will call it. So when you click what kind of data type, it immediately puts you in to rename it. So here we'll say jersey number, okay? And then we also wanted their name, right? So click to add again, and for the, now we're gonna add the first name. We're not gonna do any math on that, right? So we can use that as short text. And what's this one? First name, but let's abbreviate a little bit, and maybe we'll just call it F name. Same thing for the last name. What data type am I going to use for the last name? I'm waiting. There we go, short text, right? Because again, we're not doing any math on it. We're not going to do comparisons. It's just a text field. So here we'll say, again, shorten it to L name. And then what else we talked about? We talked about the jersey number, first name, last name, the position. Data type for position is going to be short text again. Call that just as it is, position. And then let's also do the height. So for the player height, what data type do we want for that? Right, we definitely want the height to be a number because that's something that we could come back and do math on, right? Now, and we will call that height, and we'll stop there. That's enough for today. You can see where you can go on and on with this, right? Very good. So now we have our columns defined. How do we go about placing information into the table? Good news is that is super simple, but I do want to keep this a little bit interactive. So if you know of any football players, drop me a couple names in the chat box and we'll use them as examples. And if you just want to make somebody up, that's fine too. So I'll pause a minute and I'll wait for a couple ideas to pop in the chat box of who we're going to use as our example players. All right, so first one, let's do Larry Fitzgerald, right? And okay, we'll do Larry Fitzgerald and Ben Roethlisberger. Let's do those two for now. So Larry Fitzgerald, his jersey number is, what did I do? His jersey number is 11. First name, Larry. Last name, Fitzgerald. Will help if I spell it right. Position, he is a wide receiver, and we'll just use the abbreviation of WR. And his height, I don't know off the top of my head, but the height, we're going to enter in inches, right? So I'm not going to do something like 6'3". I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to just enter a number of inches. I'm not good at math, so I'm going to bring up a calculator, right? So we have 6 times 12 gives us 72 inches, and then he's 6'3", so plus 3 more gives us 75 inches. So we'll throw 75 in there. Thank you for doing the math for me. All right, and now Larry Fitzgerald is ready. Next one we're going to add is Ben Roethlisberger, and he is number 7. And the value you entered does not match the number data type in this column. Why is it complaining to me there? What did I do wrong? Right, I put the number symbol here, and that's not valid because we said that the jersey number, that field, that column is a number data type. So if I try to put something in there that's not a number, it's going to throw me an error. So what we need to enter there is just 7, right? First name is Ben. Last name is Roethlisberger. Position for him is QB, and I don't know how tall he is. Let's just pretend he's exactly 6 feet tall, and we will say, well, I have it. Thank you for figuring it out for me. He is 6'5", so he will be in there as 77 inches. So you can see, pretty easy to add some more in. I'm a Cowboys fan, so here we're going to add Mr. Dak Prescott. He's another QB. I know he's not as tall as Roethlisberger, right? Blah, blah, blah. Easy enough to throw things in. Now you'll notice the player ID, I didn't type any of those in. 1, 2, 3, those were automatically created, right? One more, just so we can see it. My man Des Bryant, we all know he caught that pass, right? So I type in 88, Des, and you see player ID 4 gets automatically generated, right? So as I'm entering in the information, the player ID is automatically generated for me. I don't have to come up with it myself. One other thing I want to show you is this is the data view, data sheet view, all the way down here in the right corner. Instead, we can go to the design view. And now what the design view does is it shows us the metadata, right? So now our players are gone. We don't see Larry Fitzgerald. We don't see Dak Prescott. We don't see Ben Roethlisberger. What we're seeing here is the field name, the data type, and an optional description, right? So maybe for height, we want to add a description to make it more clear, right? And here we could say player height in inches. So we have added that description. Another way to go back and forth is to right-click here. So now we're in design view. When I right-click on the name of the table, I can go back to data sheet view. I made a change here. It's asking if I want to save it and keep that change. Yes, I do. So I say yes. Now we added in that metadata, the data about the data. That didn't change anything on the data sheet view in terms of the height, right? We're still seeing exactly what we had there before. But when we go back to the design view, now we have the metadata, the description about the height that gives us information about the information. And then this is also a way, let's say you have a really big table, you're doing lots of information, and you want to quickly add your new fields. You can do that right here, right? So we could add one for weight, and the data type for weight is going to be a number again, right? And we could add one for how high they can jump, how fast they run, how agile they are, right? All of those things. And then these ones, we go back. These are all going to be numbers. And then maybe we even want their salary. Now, that's a number, but we could even take it one step further and say, ooh, let's use the predefined currency, because we know the number is going to be in dollars, right? So there's a data type specifically for currency. So we'll use that one here. And then we can add descriptions as we want them, right? So the weight is going to be player, help if I spell. Wow, I'm really not spelling right today. Player weight in pounds. And then the jump is jumping ability from 0 to 99, right? So we'll just put it on a range. Same thing. Running speed from 0 to 99. And now you see how easy it is in the design view to add different fields to our table. One last thing we want to look at, it's going to be a little bit hard to see on the screen share, but right here next to player ID, you see it has this little icon of a key. That means that it's the primary key, right? That is keeping track of which player is which. It's never going to be repeated. It's going to be some kind of unique identifier for each player. You know, maybe we have a name like Roy Williams, right? There's going to be maybe multiple players called Roy Williams. How do you know which one is which? You use the player ID to distinguish between them. And that one, that data type is called auto number. That's why it's automatically generating that number as we create a new one. We can also add in validation rules. We can make fields required, all of those sorts of things. There is a video on Canvas that is 10 minutes long that will go a little bit more in depth than what we were doing. So I am going to switch over to Canvas now. I'm going to save my work on here. You can do that just by doing Control-S on your keyboard, or you can come to File, Save As, and you want to save the database, which is going to save all of the pieces. And then you have all of your different types. What we want to use is the access database type. That's the default. That's what we're going to be using as we save our work and submit them into Canvas. So select that one. And it says everything must be closed before you save it. Do you want access to do that for you? Yes. And then what do I want to call this? I'm going to call this player ratings demo, because this is the one we were working on together. Save it. Close out. And then if I want to go get it back, I open up my files and I go to, by default, when you're in the computer lab, it's going to save things to documents. So I go right here and player rating demo that we were just working on is there. When I open it up, I'm going to say enable content. And then I double click to open the player info table. And you can see everything we were just working on is still there. I'm switching over to Canvas now. So we are in our modules. We have been working on module 9 today. So database 101 and database objects, that's what we covered in the PowerPoint. But I recommend you go back through and read those pages, especially now that we have moved to an online class. When we're meeting in person, it's to review, it's to make sure everybody's on the same page. Now that we're in the online format, you should really be going through each module on Canvas and making sure on each page you understand everything that's in there. What do you need to do? We have a database basics quiz, and we have a creating databases assignment. Before we look at those, again, one more page, Microsoft Access tables. So this is talking about what we just looked at, right? So what we did together, you can go back and read it with screenshots, explanations of every step. And then there is a YouTube video down here using the Pokemon example, if that's easier for you to follow. There's about a 10-minute YouTube video, same sort of demo that we just did, but using a different example, and it does a couple different things. So if you want to make sure you know how to use Access, come to the Microsoft Access Tables page on Module 9, read through it, and watch the video. Once you're done with that, you will be in good shape for the Creating a Database Tables assignment. So this assignment, you need to use Microsoft Access. If you do not have the Microsoft Access software, we have 2 different ways to get it to you. If you have a Windows computer, you can install the software on your Windows computer. If you do not have a Windows computer, you can use any device to access the virtual computer lab. Talk to me one-on-one. We'll figure out the best way for you to get there. I will help you get there, and I'm also going to do a recording after this one showing how to install the software on your Windows computer or how to access the virtual computer lab. So once you have the Microsoft Access software, for this first assignment, I want you to create 2 tables, right? What we did together was creating 1 table. For the assignment, you need to do 2 of them, okay? Inside of each table, you need to have a primary key. That's your unique identifier. You can keep the default one if that works for what you're trying to do. Totally fine. I want in each table to have 5 fields, right? 5 columns going across. The primary key counts as one of those, so I'll need 4 more. On a total, I want to see 5 columns going across. Then I want 10 records going down, right? 10 rows. So if we're using our players example, I want to see, we worked through, I think it was 4 players together. For the assignment, I would need 10 players. Make sure you're using the right data types, right? Is it a text field? Is it a little number? Is it a big number? Is it date? Is it currency? Make sure the data type matches the data that you're putting in there. Think about when you're going to come back and do a report, when you're going to come back and create an input form. Make sure that you're laying the groundwork the right way. So when maybe you're using salary as one of your fields, make sure salary is saved as currency so it displays correctly. And then also that's a number, so you can maybe do a query to say, show me everyone whose salary is greater than $50,000, right? If you have that saved as a number data type, then you can use algebra to get it figured out. If you have that saved as text, it's not going to work. When you are submitting your assignment on Canvas, tell me in the submission, on the comments there, what is your primary key and why did you choose that one? Even if you just kept the default one, tell me why, right? So for your primary key, I want an explanation of why you use that one. And then the two tables that you're making have to be somehow related. They need to have one field in common. So using our football players example, right? We had all of our players, but maybe we could have a second table for the teams, right? So in that teams table, we would have the team name, the city, the stadium, all of those sorts of things. And then what would we use to tie those two tables together? Well, in our players table, we had a team column, right? So we would use that would be our common field. Another way, we could have gone a different direction with this, where I started adding in at the end the player ratings, right? Talking about how fast they are, or how high they can jump, all those sorts of things. As a database administrator, I would actually want that to be its own separate table, right? So table 1 would be the general player information. First name, last name, what team they play for, height and weight. That's the main player table. Table 2 would be the player attributes table, right? So that's going to have how fast they are, how agile they are, how well they catch the ball, all sorts of things, right? Whatever you want to think of. And then how would we join those two tables together? Well, we would actually just use the player ID, right? Because that primary key, the player ID, is always going to be unique. So we could use that to say, okay, all of these attributes, all of these statistics tie back to this player. So this can be done on anything you want it to be, right? This is an open-ended assignment, but don't confuse yourself, right? Keep something simple. There's a couple websites here for ideas. If you still can't think of something that works for you, you can use the Pokemon example, you can use the player ratings example. Neither of those are required. This can be about anything that's interesting to you, but that's just some ideas that you could use. So that assignment is worth 70 points, and all the particulars are here about how it's being graded. Suggested to turn that one in by Tuesday, but I know life is life right now. The other assignment is database basics, and this one is a quiz, just like we had last week. So it's based off of, this is not about access, this is about databases in general, right? The database 101, the first half of class today. That's what this quiz comes from. So this one you don't need any software for. It's just a quiz right there on Canvas. Again, try to get it done by Tuesday, but I understand if life is in the way. So those are the 2 new assignments for this week. One thing to keep in mind is that these access assignments build on each other. So this week, we're creating the tables. Next week, we're taking those tables and building on top of them, right? So this is cumulative. What you do one week is going to feed into the next week. That's why I'm suggesting you try to stay on track with me. If you can't totally understand, that's why everything is being recorded. What questions do you have for me about what we talked about today, about these 2 assignments before I stop recording? And then just to be clear, after this recording is done, I'll do one more recording showing how to get the software if you don't have the software. Feel free to hang around for that. If you don't want to hang around for that, have a great rest of your day. If you have any questions directly about the material, now is the time. If you have general questions, I'll stop the recording and we can take general questions outside of the recording. So I'm going to pause for a few seconds here for any questions about the material today or the 2 assignments we have for this week. All right, I'm going to stop recording.